Hello, grade ones. So I've been having a lot of fun with you guys talking about some different plants and animals. So I made a little chart here just to remind you about some of the things that we have talked about. Okay, and the first one up top, actually I'm going to start at the bottom because I did them a little bit out of order when I drew the pictures and wrote them out for you. But the first thing we looked at were trees. And I showed you an observation of a tree that I found, a yellow cedar tree, which is very, very, very common where we are from. And it has yellow cedar as the common name. Does anybody remember that all plants and animals have common and scientific names? Yeah, we've talked about that a little bit together, right? So the common name is probably the name that we know it by and we have heard of before, but there's also a scientific name, and it's usually really long, a little bit difficult to pronounce. But do you remember why we have a scientific name? Yeah, it's to help keep our plants and animals straight all around the world. So there are so many different countries and so many different places in our world, and a lot of them have some very similar types of trees and types of animals. So a lot of these common names might be repeated. There could be a tree in a different part of our world that is also called a yellow cedar. So scientists and biologists that study plants and animals like to be able to keep things straight. So they don't want any plants or animals to have the same name if they aren't exactly the same plant or exactly the same animal. So scientists came up with a scientific name, and that's what keeps all plants and animals straight. So there's no repetition. So if a creature or a plant or an animal or something has a scientific name, it will only go by that name if it is identically the same plant or same animal, even if you find it in a different part of the world. So for that cedar tree that I found, its scientific name was Chamaesporus nootchatnus, and that's maybe not exactly how a scientist would say it, but pretty close. I used a lot of my reading skills to try to sound that out. So I'll make sure I get it close up. So that's a picture of my cedar tree. There's the common name and the scientific name. We also looked at flowers, and I showed you an example of a flower. Mine was a dandelion. Dandelion. So that is the common name. The scientific name for that is the taraxacum. So there you are, dandelion and taraxacum. Then we looked at birds, and the bird that I found and took some observations on was a robin. You might have seen those around before near your home. So the scientific name for a robin is the Turdus migratorius. So I'll hold that up close so you can see. And then we looked at insects, and the insect that I found and took observations on was the ladybug. And a scientific name for a ladybug is the Coccinellidae. So I'm doing my best to pronounce those. But the main thing is that you get the idea that every plant and every animal has a common name and a scientific name, just so that you know the difference and you know that both of those exist. The next thing I want to be able to review with all the plants and animals that we've been talking about are some of their structural features. So with each activity that you had with all of our science lessons, you had an activity worksheet that you could either draw on your own sheet of paper or you could print off. And on all of those sheets, we took observations about our plant and about our animal. So when we took those observations, we looked at some of those physical characteristics. And the physical characteristics means, what does it look like? What color is it? How big is it? Does it have legs and eyes or arms or antenna? Can it fly? Does it have wings? All of those different things are physical characteristics, and they show us what are called structural features. So I just want to go over that a little bit, because the reason why we want to get good at making those observations is to help us understand the plants and the animals that we're seeing and we're looking at. So if you notice a structural feature that's a part of the plant or animal, and you notice, let's say, that it has wings. Wings would be a structural feature. That is an observation we could make about an animal. If it has wings, you know it probably can fly. So just by looking at some of those features, we start to understand some of the ways that these animals live and some of the things that they can do. So let's try to think of some other structural features that are out there that you might have noticed on your animals or your plants. Can you think of anything? Yeah, I bet you came up with some examples. So with plants, roots are structural features. They are part of what makes the plant. And you might not always see the roots unless that plant is overturned. So maybe if some of you have gone hiking, you might have seen a tree that has fallen over. And when it falls over, you can see all the roots that are underneath of it. Those are a structural feature of a tree. And the roots, you'll remember from our Seed to Plant book, the roots are what anchor that tree or that plant down, and they absorb all the nutrients. That's how plants get their food, is through those roots. So they're very, very important. You might eat your food through your mouth and use your teeth to chew it. Plants absorb those nutrients and absorb that food through their roots. Pretty cool. Some other structural features you might notice, so plants, other structural features on your animals, can you think of any? Let's just try to see if we can come up with some examples. What could they be? What are some of the physical things, what those animals look like that you observed on the insect or the bird, or even just any animal that's out there? What did you see? So here's an example. When you look at a duck, you might notice it has webbed feet. So inside of those kind of toes or claws that come out of the duck, it's connected with some skin, and that's called a webbed foot. So if any of you have been swimming at the pool and you put flippers on your feet, that's very similar to a webbed foot. So if you see an animal that has webbing on its feet, what do you think it could mean? Yeah, it's probably an animal that likes to swim. So that's another great observation of a physical feature or a structural feature that is on an animal. Something else you might observe are the teeth. If you notice that something has really sharp teeth, what do you think that might mean? Yeah, it's probably something that eats meat. So if it has sharp teeth like a bear or a shark, or what about a big cat like a cougar or a lion? Those types of animals eat meat, so they need those sharp, sharp teeth. What are some animals that don't have sharp teeth? Does anyone have any ideas? How about a horse? If you've ever seen a horse's teeth, they are flat on top. They don't come to sharp points. That's because horses only eat plants. They eat mostly grass and hay, so they have flat teeth. So that's another structural feature that differentiates one animal from another and can give us a clue about the types of things that that animal does or eats or how it lives. Pretty interesting. So do you all think you understand a little bit more about structural features? Say that with me. Structural features. So the next time you're going out and you're looking at plants or animals and you're taking some observations about what it looks like, think about those structural features and try to take your observations one step further. So you're not just writing down, my ladybug is red. You're trying to think, why could it be red? I wonder why being red helps a ladybug to be able to survive or to live. What do you think the color red could do?